Wife's ex crashed our wedding 3 days ago. Now she's staying at a friend's place and barely speaking to me. Throwaway for obvious reasons. Long-time lurker, first-time poster. So I'm supposed to be on my honeymoon right now, but instead, I'm sitting in our empty apartment drinking whiskey at 11 a.m. while my wife of 3 days is staying at her friend's place and barely talking to me. I honestly don't even know where to start with this whole mess. I, male, 34, met Victoria, female, 32, about a year and a half ago when my construction company was renovating the office building where she works as an interior designer. She came to check on some design stuff, and we just hit it off immediately. Like, we talked for almost 2 hours that first day, and I just knew there was something special there. She's pretty, smart, funny, and stands out in a crowd. I asked her out right there, and she said yes, and honestly, everything was basically perfect until 3 days ago. We had what people call a whirlwind romance, I guess. We got engaged after only 8 months, which yeah, I know is fast. My brother Steve definitely thought I was rushing things. He kept making these jokes about U-Haul lesbians, except with straight people, lol. And my mom was initially kind of cold toward Victoria because she seemed too polished and comes from money, unlike our middle-class family. One thing about Victoria is she's always been pretty private about her past. Whenever I tried to ask about her family or ex-boyfriends, she'd get this guarded look and change the subject. Just said there was too much drama with her family and that they disapproved of her career choice. They weren't at the wedding. She didn't even invite them. I figured everyone has stuff they don't want to talk about, so I never pushed too hard. Maybe that was a mistake. I don't know. So anyway, our wedding was this past Saturday. We saved for months to afford this nice lakeside venue. Had about 120 guests. Everything was perfect. Victoria seemed unusually nervous before the ceremony, but I just thought it was normal bride jitters. She kept checking her phone too, which was weird, but I was also nervous, so didn't think much about it. The ceremony went smoothly. She looked really pretty in her dress, and I seriously felt like the luckiest guy in the world. Then comes the reception. We're having our first dance. I'm holding my wife in my arms, and suddenly I feel someone tap me on the shoulder. I turn around, and there's this guy I've never seen before in what had to be like a $3,000 suit. I noticed because I literally just bought my wedding suit and was shocked at how expensive they are. He's tall, dark-haired, and really good-looking. Victoria completely freezes up next to me. The guy tells Victoria he's been looking everywhere for her, all dramatic-like. Victoria starts stammering and asks what Brett is doing here. So I figure out this must be an ex or something. This Brett guy then has the audacity to tell her he never stopped loving her, right in the middle of our wedding dance. I ask Victoria who the hell this guy is, and before she can answer, he claims he's the love of Victoria's life, the love of her life, at our wedding. Then he reaches for Victoria's arm to pull her away from me, and I lost it. I'm not a violent guy, I swear, but something in me snapped. I punched him square in the face. I'm not proud of it, but I'd be lying if I said it didn't feel good for about 2 seconds. He falls backward, blood coming from his nose. Everyone at the wedding is gasping and staring. And I still can't believe this part, Victoria rushes to his side. Not to me, to him. She yells at me, asking what's wrong with me. Like I'm the crazy one for punching the guy who just crashed our wedding and tried to steal my bride. I'm just standing there in complete shock while Victoria helps this Brett guy up, and they disappear into a side room to talk privately, at our wedding. I waited there like an idiot for almost 30 minutes. My best man Mike tried to distract everyone with speeches while the bride was literally missing from our wedding. Some people were leaving, others were whispering. It was humiliating. When Victoria finally came back, she looked upset. Not like she'd been crying, but like, I don't know, like she was in shock. She told me we needed to postpone our honeymoon because something complicated has come up. That's literally all she would say. The drive home was the worst 40 minutes of my life. She barely spoke, just stared out the window. When I asked who Brett was, she just said he was someone from my past and that she needed time to process things. For the past 3 days, she's been staying at her friend Carla's apartment. She sent me maybe 5 texts total, all basically saying she needs space to figure things out. Figure what out? Whether she wants to be married to Emmy or run off with the guy who crashed our wedding. I completely trust Victoria, or at least I did, but I'm going crazy imagining what Brett might have told her that could have changed her behavior so dramatically. When we were dating, I occasionally glanced at her social media and even checked her phone once or twice when she was in the shower. I know that's not great, but I've been cheated on before and have some trust issues, and I never saw anything about a Brett or any ex she seemed hung up on. I'm just lost. Why is my new wife suddenly taking her ex's side after he crashed our wedding? What could he possibly have told her during their private conversation? Is my marriage already over after just 3 days? Edit. A lot of people are asking if I knew about Brett before the wedding. No, she never mentioned him specifically. When I asked about her exes early in our relationship, she just said she'd had a couple of serious relationships that ended badly and didn't want to dwell on the past. I didn't push because I figured everyone has exes they don't want to talk about. Edit 2. To everyone saying I shouldn't have punched him. Yeah, I know I overreacted, but the guy literally grabbed my wife's arm to pull her away during our first dance. What would you have done? And for those saying I have anger issues, I promise I'm normally super chill. Ask literally anyone who knows me. This was like the one time in my adult life I've hit someone. I was protecting my wife from some random dude grabbing her. Edit 3. Someone asked how Brett knew where the wedding was. That's actually a really good question that I hadn't even thought about. We didn't post the venue details on social media for privacy reasons, so either he got it from one of Victoria's friends or Victoria told him herself. God, I hope it's not the latter. Edit 4. Thanks for all the support. Some of you are suggesting I go to Carla's apartment and demand answers, but I'm trying to give Victoria the space she asked for. I don't want to make things worse. I'll update when I know more. Edit 5. To the people suggesting Victoria might have been hiding something major. I mean, I guess that's possible, but we've been together for a year and a half. We live together. We share finances. I feel like I would have noticed something off, though I guess the way she acted at the wedding was definitely off. I don't know. My head is spinning with all these possibilities. Now for the first update. Wife's ex crashed our wedding. Now I found out she's still legally married to him. So it's been 2 weeks since my last post about my disastrous wedding, where Victoria's ex Brett showed up during our first dance. After days of Victoria barely texting me and staying at her friend Carla's place, she finally agreed to meet me at a coffee shop halfway between my apartment and Carla's. I got there 20 minutes early because I was so nervous. I ordered her favorite drink as a peace offering, but then she showed up late and the drink was already cold. When Victoria walked in, she looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair not done like she usually has it. My first thought was that she'd been up all night with Brett, which made me feel sick, but she later told me she's barely been sleeping because of all the stress. Yeah, I felt like an asshole for assuming the worst. We sat down and she said she wanted to explain everything. Then she showed me some legal papers. At first, I didn't even understand what I was looking at. Then I saw it. A marriage certificate from 10 years ago, with her name and Brett's name on it, from some Vegas wedding chapel. I just stared at the papers like an idiot. I couldn't even process what I was seeing. She told me she and Brett had gotten married during spring break in college. She was crying and said she thought it was annulled years ago. When I asked how she could possibly not know if she was divorced, she admitted she never followed up. She just trusted Brett to handle the paperwork. That's when I realized our marriage isn't even legal. She couldn't even look at me when she confirmed this. She was crying hard now, saying she never meant to lie to me, that she honestly thought the Vegas thing wasn't legally binding, or that Brett had taken care of it. I asked her why she never mentioned having a husband before. She insisted she didn't think it was real and that she left him 8 years ago, believing it was just some meaningless paperwork that got voided. I asked her what Brett wants now after all this time. She couldn't even look me in the eye when she answered. She said Brett claims he never stopped loving her and has been searching for her since she cut him off 8 years ago. How hard could he have been looking? She's had the same job for 5 years and isn't exactly hiding. Victoria told me she and Brett dated all through college. She described it as intense but toxic, which is exactly the kind of vague explanation she always gives about her past. She finally shared some actual details about their relationship. Their families are both wealthy and are business associates, and their relationship was kind of arranged, encouraged by their parents. After their Vegas wedding, Brett got an opportunity at his dad's company in Tokyo, and they separated with the understanding that Brett would file for divorce. She just assumed it was handled and never checked, and then they lost touch completely, which honestly seems weird to me. Like, how do you lose touch with your husband? I felt completely betrayed, not just because of the legal mess, which is bad enough, but because she never once mentioned such a huge relationship from her past. She literally has never told me she was married before. I know I'm not perfect either. I told Victoria I'd only had 3 serious girlfriends before her, but I left out a few shorter relationships that didn't seem important enough to mention. But this is not the same thing as hiding a whole-ass marriage. Then she told me Brett has offered her a place to stay in his guest house while they sort things out, and she's considering it. When I asked what exactly they need to sort out besides getting divorced as soon as possible, she said Brett's reappearance has stirred up old emotions she thought were buried. She told me how Brett has changed and seems truly sorry about whatever happened between them before. I don't believe that for a second. The guy crashed our wedding and tried to pull her away during our first dance. That's not the behavior of someone who's changed. What really got to me was how she talked about all this history they share that I knew nothing about. Inside jokes and people I've never heard of and trips they took together made me feel like I barely know my own wife. I guess technically she's not actually my wife, which is a whole other problem. When she admitted she was seriously considering Brett's offer to stay at his guest house, I couldn't take it anymore. I just got up and walked out. Didn't even say goodbye. I just couldn't sit there anymore and listen to her talk about maybe going to live with another man 2 weeks after our wedding. I called my brother Steve on the way home. He's never been Brett's biggest fan, even though they just met at the wedding for like 2 seconds. Steve pointed out something I hadn't considered. Why would Brett suddenly reappear after so many years? Steve thinks it might have something to do with Brett's wealth, like maybe he's after Victoria's money or something. But that doesn't make sense because Brett seems loaded, expensive suit, fancy watch, etc. And Victoria makes good money as a designer, but she's not rich. Anyway, I've done something I'm not super proud of, but I feel like I had no choice. I hired a private investigator to look into Brett's background. I want to know what his deal really is. Why now? Why crash our wedding? Why offer Victoria a place to stay? There's something off about the whole situation, and I can't put my finger on it, but it feels wrong. I don't know if our marriage, or whatever it is, can be saved at this point. I keep wondering if Victoria ever actually loved me, or if she was just settling because she couldn't have Brett. I'm also wondering what Brett's real agenda is after all these years. None of this makes any sense. I'm just lost. Again, even more than before. My wife is considering moving in with her actual legal husband while she figures out her feelings. What the actual feck is happening to my life right now? Edit. A lot of people are asking how Brett found Victoria after 8 years. I asked her that too, and she said he ran into a mutual college friend at some industry conference a few months ago who mentioned Victoria was getting married. So I guess that explains the timing. Edit 2. To everyone suggesting I lawyer up immediately, yes, I'm looking into it. I'm meeting with someone next week to understand my options. Though honestly, I'm not sure what legal standing I even have since our marriage isn't valid. As many of you pointed out, I'm basically just some guy who had an expensive party at this point. Edit 3. For those asking how Brett could afford to track Victoria down if he's potentially after her money, the guy wears like a $10,000 watch and drives a Tesla. He appears wealthy, but Steve thinks it could all be for show. I don't know. My PI should be able to figure out if he's actually rich or just pretending. Edit 4. Yes, I know I should have asked more questions about Victoria's past before marrying her. I get it. But she always changed the subject when I tried, and I didn't want to push. I thought I was being respectful of her boundaries. Clearly, that was a mistake. Believe me, I'm kicking myself enough without y'all piling on. Edit 5. Several people have pointed out that Victoria might be in danger if Brett was abusive in the past. I honestly don't know if he was. She described their relationship as toxic, but didn't give specifics. I've texted her, asking her to please not stay at his place until we know more, but she hasn't responded. Edit 6. Oh, I forgot to mention. Her friend Carla called me this morning and told me I need to fight for my marriage and not just walk away. Easy for her to say when she's not the one whose wife is considering moving in with her ex. And Carla's been Team Victoria this whole time, so I'm surprised she's even talking to me. Now for the second update. Wife's ex crashed our wedding, and she was still legally married to him. Now I know why he really came back. This past month has honestly been the absolute worst of my entire life. I haven't been sleeping more than like 3 to 4 hours a night. I've lost weight because I can barely eat, and I've been making stupid mistakes at work that I never would have made before all this crap started happening. Actually, my boss Faith had to pull me aside 2 weeks ago because I completely messed up some measurements on the Riverside project. Cost the company like $8,000 in materials we couldn't use. First major screw-up I've had in my 6 years there. She was actually really understanding about it though, and told me to take some time off if I needed it. I didn't, because what am I gonna do? Sit at home and think about how my wife is living with her actual legal husband? No thanks. Anyway, remember how I mentioned hiring a private investigator to look into Brett? Well, he's been digging around for the past few weeks, trying to find anything suspicious. I was starting to think maybe I was just being paranoid and wasting money, but I just knew something wasn't right about Brett suddenly reappearing after 8 years. While I was waiting for the PI's full report, I decided to do some digging of my own. I reached out to this woman named Anna, who was one of Victoria's college friends. We met briefly at our engagement party, but I honestly barely remembered her. She seemed really hesitant to get involved at first, but I guess she could tell I was desperate because she finally agreed to meet for coffee. So I met Anna at this little cafe near her office, and wow. She told me some stuff about Brett and Victoria's relationship that made my stomach turn. Brett was super controlling back in college. He would check Victoria's phone constantly, isolate her from friends who didn't like him, including Anna, which is why they lost touch for years, and would get crazy jealous over nothing. Anna said their friends were actually relieved when Victoria finally left him and moved across the country. Oh, and get this. Anna also mentioned that despite Brett's family seeming super wealthy and important, they actually had some major financial problems a few years back. Like nearly lost everything kind of problems. But they kept up appearances because of their reputation or whatever. That part really stuck with me for some reason. Fast forward to last week, I finally got the full report from the PI. And holy shit, it explained everything. First, Brett's tech company, Visionary Solutions or some pretentious BS like that, is basically on the verge of bankruptcy. They've lost like 60% of their clients in the last year. The guy is broke despite driving around in his Tesla and wearing watches that cost more than my car. But here's what's important. Victoria recently inherited a ton of money from her grandmother, like $3.7 million that was in some trust until Victoria turned 32, which happened 2 months before our wedding. I had no idea about this inheritance. Victoria had always been super vague about her family's finances. I just thought she was being modest or whatever, but turns out she was hiding this whole secret fortune from me. And yeah, I realize how that sounds, but I swear I'm not after her money. I didn't even know about it until the PI told me. So it finally clicked. Brett suddenly reappears right after Victoria gets access to millions of dollars. And since he's technically still her legal husband, he could potentially claim a portion of that inheritance in a divorce settlement. I spent like 3 days just trying to process all this. I couldn't think straight and needed time alone. I mean, how TF do you even handle information like this? My wife is living with her ex who's probably trying to scam her out of millions of dollars she never even told me about. Finally, I decided I needed to confront them both together. I texted Victoria and said we needed to meet to discuss divorce proceedings, which wasn't totally a lie, I guess. She suggested meeting at Brett's house since she was staying there, which honestly made me feel sick, but whatever. When I got there, Brett answered the door with this fake, friendly smile. Victoria was sitting in the living room, looking super uncomfortable. The whole place was filled with expensive-looking stuff that I now knew he probably couldn't actually afford. We all sat down in his study, and I started by casually asking Brett how his tech company was doing. He immediately started saying how great business was, how they just signed all these new contracts, and more. I let him finish, and then showed him the folder of documents the PI had given me. You should have seen his face. I told him I knew his company had lost 60% of its value in the last 6 months and was on the verge of bankruptcy. Brett tried to claim the reports were outdated or fake, but I could tell Victoria was starting to get suspicious. She kept looking back and forth between us. Then I told them I knew about Victoria's inheritance, the $3.7 million from her grandmother's trust. Victoria was shocked I knew about the money since she never told me. Brett tried to change the subject, saying I was just jealous and making things up. So I showed more documents about his personal debt. The guy is in serious trouble trying to maintain his fancy lifestyle. Victoria asked Brett if it was true. He hesitated just long enough that we all knew the answer. I asked him if that's why he suddenly showed up after 8 years because of the timing with Victoria's inheritance. Brett lost it at that point. He started shouting that I needed to leave his house and that I was making up lies. But Victoria stood up and demanded he tell her the truth. That's when everything fell apart for Brett. He admitted he did have financial motives, but insisted his feelings for Victoria were still real. Victoria kept asking more questions, and it came out that Brett had actually been tracking her for years through social media and mutual friends, just waiting for the right moment. Victoria was getting more upset as she realized how she'd been manipulated. Then she told Brett she had been recording our entire conversation on her phone. When she said that, Brett completely snapped. He lunged toward her, trying to grab her phone, and I stepped between them to protect her. Brett tried to punch me, but I dodged it, and he lost his balance and went crashing through his glass coffee table. It was actually pretty bad. Blood everywhere, lots of cuts. Victoria called 911 right away. The cops came and took statements. They didn't arrest Brett, but warned him about harassment. Victoria moved out of Brett's place that same day. She called an Uber to take her to a hotel with what she could quickly pack. The rest of her stuff she got later with a police escort. We had a really intense talk the next day, where Victoria apologized a lot for doubting me and for not being honest about her inheritance and her past with Brett. She said she was embarrassed about the whole Vegas marriage thing and just wanted to forget it ever happened, which is why she never mentioned it to me. So where are we now? Victoria filed for divorce from Brett and hired an attorney to make sure he can't touch her inheritance. We're not living together right now. I'm still in our apartment and she's staying at a hotel. We've started couples therapy, which is weird, but probably necessary. Victoria wants us to have another small ceremony once her divorce is finalized, which I guess is nice. I think I want that too. But I'd be lying if I said I fully trust her again. I'm completely over the whole Brett ordeal, honestly. Okay, that's not entirely true. I still get angry thinking about it. But I still find myself checking Victoria's phone sometimes when she's not looking. I know that's not healthy. Our relationship has definitely changed after all this. We're trying to rebuild with more honesty and better communication, but it's hard. I keep wondering what else she might be hiding from me. Oh, and Brett apparently skipped town after getting served the divorce papers. Heard through the grapevine that his company officially filed for bankruptcy last week. Can't say I'm sad about that. I guess we're trying to be positive. Victoria seems genuinely sorry and committed to making things work. The Brett drama seems to be over, thank God. But we still have a lot of work to do. A lot. Edit. To answer the most common questions. Yes, Victoria claims she was going to tell me about the inheritance eventually, but was waiting for the right time. Apparently her family has weird issues around money, part of why she's estranged from them, and she doesn't like talking about it. Still doesn't excuse hiding it from me, in my opinion. Edit 2. For those asking why I hired a PI instead of just talking to Victoria, would you trust someone who moved in with their ex-husband 2 weeks after your wedding? I needed objective information. Edit 3. Lots of people are asking if Brett was abusive in their past relationship. Victoria hasn't used that exact word, but based on what Anna told me and some things Victoria has hinted at since moving out of his place, yeah, probably. Which makes me feel both better about her going back to him, she was manipulated, and worse, why wouldn't she tell me about this? Edit 4. Some people are suggesting I'm after Victoria's money now. Are you kidding me? I literally didn't even know about the money until a week ago. We've been together for a year and a half, and I've been supporting myself just fine. I just want my relationship back. Edit 5. For those wondering about legal implications of our wedding, we never filed the marriage license since Victoria was still married, so technically, nothing happened legally. Just an expensive party where I got humiliated. Awesome. Edit 6. To the people calling me a doormat for still wanting to be with Victoria, you don't know her like I do. She made a huge mistake, yes, but she's also been through a lot with Brett in the past that I'm only now learning about, and I can see how she got confused when he suddenly reappeared. I'm not saying I've forgiven everything, but I'm willing to try.